All right. Lean is the most spread management concept of all time. And the problem with that is that no one really knows what it's all about. And that has been my main research theme for the latest 10 years. What is it really about? And I got the opportunity to be inside of Toyota Japan for many hours, and I was standing in the corner for 3 months first, saying nothing, just observing what are they doing in this company. And then after a while, I got the opportunity to ask how questions. How do they do that? And then by the end, the latest half a year, I got the opportunity to ask why questions. Why do we really use this? And I have one story that I think summarizes a lot what Lean is really about. And this is a story about a company that within their industry, they were considered to be really lean. They were the main benchmark. No one were as lean as they were. So lean was used as an adjective defining what they were doing. And they said, we have been leanifying for many years. So lean was used as a verb. So they said, we are lean maybe, they were proud, but there must be something more. So they got in contact with Toyota Japan and got in contact with a man called Oba-san. So they flew him to their company and they wanted him to evaluate their company. So he said, show me your factory. And they brought him in and he started to ask a lot of questions. Questions and questions and questions. And after a while they got eager and so they asked him, Oba-san, are we lean? And he said, impossible to say. Like, okay. And he continued with his questions and at lunch they again asked him, Oba-san, what do you think, are we lean? And again he said, impossible to say. And then by the end of the day, the CEO comes up to Oba-san and the CEO says, well, Oba-san, we brought you here because we wanted a valid evaluation of our operations. So can you please tell us, are we lean? Can you validate that? What do you think? And then he said, it's impossible to say because I wasn't here yesterday. And I think just this little sentence really pinpoints what Toyota makes different from all other companies. I mean, how they drive learning, because that's very much what it's all about. Now I prepared some charts here, like a chef program. So this company, they felt that they were lean. Their perception of operational excellence was that they could take some kind of KPI and say, well, we are lean, we are having real good customer satisfaction or high employee satisfaction, or we are profitable. But Oba-san said it's not about the absolute performance. It's about if I can come here at day 1 and see that you're performing on this level, and then I can come here at day 2 and see that you're performing on this level. See that you have made some kind of difference. That's the kind of state that I would be looking for. The dynamic state. It's not about the static state. It's not about finding the big fish. It's about fishing all the time. So creating self-fishing organizations. And that is, I mean, to say, it's impossible to say because I wasn't here yesterday. I mean, it could be trivial to say that everyone wants to learn. Everyone really wants to drive learning. But the question is, how conscious are you really about driving your own learning in a proactive way? I mean, here we have evolution. I mean, most individuals and organizations, it's more like this. I mean, we have pros and cons, ups and downs in our lives, and we tend to learn, especially on the peaks here, the tops. Oh, she was so happy, so I continue with this behavior. Or he was really, really disappointed, so I never do that again. I mean, we have some kind of normality called the life. And then we have deviations from the life, the normality, and that's what drive learning. And that is what I call reactive learning. But what they do at Toyota is that they do proactive learning. And what I've identified in my research is a particular loop where they drive learning. And it's an interlinked set of routines, always pushing them to take the next step. And these routines can be summarized in a very simple way. I call it the loop. So it's about set, test, evaluate, analyze, learn, and improve. Let me just take an example. Think if we were to ask Oba-san to have a speech here at TEDx. I mean, he would probably be really happy and say, oh, interesting opportunity. So, I mean, But he drives learning instead of just execution. That's the intersection. What is the why? Are you doing something in order to execute? Just to do it, or are you doing it in order to learn? If you make pancakes, do you just make the pancakes and you're happy and feel, oh, that was really nice pancakes? Or do you make the pancakes in order to learn, meaning, how am I going to do the pancakes so the next time I do the pancakes, I will be able to do it a little bit better? That's a totally different type of mindset. How many times do you have a coffee with your best friend and say, now I'm going to have a coffee, and I'm going to have this intense coffee break with my best girlfriend, Anna, and I really hope that I will learn something, so the next time I have a coffee with her, I will be able to do it a little bit nicer. And then one can question, what is nicer? Maybe she will become happier, or I become happier, or, it depends on what is nicer or better. But this is the intersection. How do we really put our focus when doing things? So Obasan, he would say, okay, we have a TEDx speech. He would say, well, what is the intention of my TEDx speech? So he would analyze the customers and he would come up, this is my intention. So he could come up with a strategy here. Here's the intention. This is what I want to produce. This is the ahas that I want to deliver at my TED speech. And then he would have an hypothesis about how to deliver that intentions. So he would have the different stories. Maybe he would take his own story and so on. Different sets of activities, all comprising this 18 minutes speech. So he would have a strategy, because the strategy is to have an intention and know how to get there. So he set his best TEDx speech before he come here. And I call that pro-action. Before you do it, because the loop contains of pro-action, action, reaction. So before he comes here, he would say, well, this is my best way of doing it. Then he would test it, meaning test his hypothesis. So he would write it up like this, and he will try to produce it as he did it. And then after, reaction. So we have pro-action, action, reaction. Reaction, that would be, well, can we find any deviation from my best way of doing it? And the deviations would be, first from a process perspective. Well, here we have check and check, but here we have a deviation. So we can have a deviation here, meaning that this was a little bit delayed, and this one becomes a little bit shorter. So we have two deviations here. So deviations from process perspective, and then he could also ask the audience, did they like it or not? And he could have a personal perspective. He could also look at the evaluation. So a hypothesis, what is my best way of doing it? Test it, and then evaluate it. And then he could analyze. Okay, all these deviations, why did they occur? What is the root trigger of why I cannot follow my best way of doing it? And I have a beautiful story about I was at the subway the other day, and I was sitting in front of a mother, and she was probably in my age, having a baby, and she was really, really, really tired. And next to her was her son, and he was a speedy. He was like running around, and then he said, Mom, what is that? And then she said, what do you mean? What is that, Mom? She was like, oh. And again, what is that? She said, it's a seat, she said. And he said, okay, why is it called a seat? She's like, I don't know why it's called a seat. He's like, why don't you know that? Well, I don't know why it's called a seat. It's a seat. But why don't you know it? It's called a seat. It's language. It's probably some kind of man who came up with the word 1,000 years ago. I don't know. And he's like, what is his name? And I was like, I don't know what his name is. You don't even know where he lives. I don't know if it's even a man. Maybe it's a woman. Shut up, she said. And we were like sitting there, and I was fairly impressed by this 3-year-old guy that he tried to push the why question. Why did this, why, he didn't accept the what. So if we can analyze the whys of the deviation, that's when we can really learn. So the why, the trigger of the deviations from our best way of doing things, that's when we can learn something, the ahas. I learned quite a lot, but just listening to this 3-year-old guy. And then when we can do the aha, then we can change. And then we are back on the loop. The second loop. Well, what if Obasan were to do this one more time, he would probably have some different ahas triggered by the different deviations, triggered by the fact he tested his best way of doing it, and triggered by the fact that he developed a best way of doing it. But how often do you really do things in your best way? Maybe if you have a speech like this, everyone is well prepared. But if you have a dinner with your father on a Sunday, do you have that mindset? So this is the, I would say, the core making Toyota extremely different. Their dynamic capability or their learn anyhow capability. They have a capability to build new capabilities. It's not just about regular capabilities. They have a capability building capability, so they can always learn. So given this, one can question, how can this be applied to your personal life? I was writing on my doctoral thesis 4 years ago. And writing has always been a challenge for me. Many different why. I have real difficulties in concentrating when I think things are boring. But when things are fun, then I can get a real crazy maniac and focus all the time. But when things are boring, which writing is, I really have difficulties. I bleed all the time when I write. I really bleed. And then I got some feedback from a friend, and then I have this old-timer professor. He said, you know, Niklas, writing a doctoral thesis, it's about ass time. What do you mean ass time? Well, rövtid. I mean, you sit on your ass and you write. If you sit on your ass and you write for 4 hours, that way you will become a great professor. How fun is that? Well, I have a nice week. 40 hours of ass time. It's not like you feel super inspired. And my other professor said, doctoral thesis, Niklas, you don't have to write a good doctoral thesis, just write it. Oh, I feel so inspired. And my mom said, oh, Niklas, you can do so many things that you do great. But what I hear is, Niklas, maybe you picked the wrong type of profession. So you're a little bit low. But then I felt maybe this loop could be my thing. So I started the loop. I'm going to develop a capability to write. And every time I write, I'm going to write. So the next time I write, I will be able to do it a little bit better. So I took this line of routine. And I'm going to... I mean, let's just propose that, Thursday is a writing day. So what I did then was that I used this set of routines. So the first one was the day before here on Wednesday was, if I were to write in my best way, how would I do it? How many words? Well, let's start with 1,000 words. That was really challenging for me. And then I could put up a schedule how I would do it. I would go up at 6 o'clock and I would go to bed at 10 o'clock and I would have lunch and blah, 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 blah. Then, test. Do it. Right. And then I could rate exactly, I overslept and blah, blah, blah. It was a nice coffee and blah, blah, blah. And I was Facebooking, Instagramming, Twittering, and yada, yada. And I got to bed after I looking through this series because it was so nice. Okay. So that was number 2. 3, evaluate. We had some kind of deviations. Here, overslept 2 hours. And then we had the long fika, really nice. And then we had the Facebook 2 hours and answering emails. Quite difficult, but that was the evaluation. And then why? Because the interesting thing is the trends that you can see here, because these are the deviations from the real me. I think this is the way I work. But here we have both positive and negative deviations from where can I not be the person I think I am or want to be. And I had 80 hours of deviations the first months when I did this. 80 hours. 20 hours was related to my girlfriend. She called me and said, Niklas, can you help me? Yes. 15 hours was related to my best friend. Niklas, can you help me? Yes. 35 hours was related to I was a yes person. And then I had 20 hours for just writing emails, and then it was some other things, doing things for other people. And then I said, well, we have, during 1 month, I have 80 hours of deviation just because I'm a yes person. But the result was that the average grade of my everyday week, my best grade was 10. My average was 2.3. And my coach said, Niklas, is that good? Do you think you will be happy in a long-term perspective if your average grade is 2.3 out of 10? Because I always felt that I couldn't cope with my plan. So I was analyzing and try to find what is the inner, why do I do things? I'm a yes person. Why am I a yes person? And then I could learn a lot about myself, and then I could improve. Maybe sometimes I wanted to say yes, but at least I saw the intersection. Before I was just yes, but now I could see, well, here's an impulse. Shall I say yes or no? Yes, of course, to my mother, or to my girlfriend, or to my best friend. But if it's just for some just regular person saying, may you take this phone call? I said, no, I do something else. So when I started to write, I was looping and looping and looping and looping. And I can tell you, during 30 days, I think I increased my productivity 200-300 times. And I was like super engaged. I was like, hallelujah, it's not about ass time, it's about developing a dynamic capability. So I called my old professor and said, Krista, you haven't understood a shit, I can tell you. It's about setting your best way of writing, you test, you evaluate it, analyze, learn and improve, and it is a dynamic loop. You have a capability to develop new capabilities, and I'm going to be the best writer in the world. It's about dynamic, blah, 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 blah. And it was like, Niklas, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I just want to keep one thing very clear. A good doctoral thesis is a finished doctoral thesis. Click. It's like, okay then, I said, you can shut up, because I'm going to loop my ass to hell. So I started to loop and loop and loop and loop. And I realized that Facebook, Twitter, and all that is not so good. So I said, my writing frames is close the door, turn off the internet, give the passwords to my brother, change my mobile phone. And then I started to write. I was super productive, not so social. But then my best friend Ole said, Niklas, you look a little bit fat and pale. I said, oh, thanks for the feedback. And he said, what are you doing? I'm lean writing, you know. It's about looping. And he said, well, Niklas, have you been talking with Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, Dr. Movement, and Dr. Happiness? I said, what? He said, Dr. Diet, it's about how you eat. Dr. Quiet, how you sleep. Dr. Movement, how you move. And then Dr. Happiness, everyone should have something to look forward to. And I said, no problem, I could include that in my schedule. So here in the setting schedule, I had Dr. Diet, eating 5 times a week, and I was having Dr. Quiet, I should sleep, and Dr. Happiness, always after work, you know, it's good, something. And then Dr. Movement, I did some aerobics and Bikram yoga, and hallelujah, it was quite nice. So I was looping, and you know, my mood was increased, and I lost my nice stomach, and I felt that Christer, I understand he was picky before, so I called him again and said, I understand that, well, it's not only about looping, it's you have to see the human behind and build the body, because you are what you eat and you are what you sleep. I told him, he was like, just quiet. I said, you have to talk with Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, Dr. Movement, and Dr. Happiness. And he was like, totally quiet, and he said, well, Niklas, I don't know what to say anymore, but the only doctor I know is Dr. Deadline. Click. And that's how they are. Professors are cruel, you know. But I learned a lot. This was the triggering point for developing this concept. And now we have been testing it in many different contexts. And I think the strength is very much about this part here. I mean, what is our best way of doing things? What is our best life? I mean, we have so many different things in our lives. This is me being really happy, and this is my life. Every week we have 168 hours. I mean, 1/3 we sleep, 1/3 we work, and 1/3 we do private things. We have many different areas. Some are Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, Dr. Movement, and Dr. Happiness. I mean, we could divide the life into different areas. But what I think is interesting, do you have a goal with your relationship with your father? I mean, if you die tomorrow, what is the intention with your relationship? And moreover that, how are you going to secure that this intention is realized? This is the strategy of your life. Everyone needs a strategy of their lives. I mean, if we don't have a strategy of our lives, we just end up in a reactive learning, and if we are lucky, we get some experience. But what I think is that if we take this, of course, we shouldn't overuse it, but it's a fantastic tool to think about, who am I and who do I want to be? I mean, the deviations here tells you a lot about. I'm a yes person. One of my best friends, he was working as a top management consultant for many years. And one day he got a phone call that his mother died. She got a stroke. And he was, of course, devastated. So I met him. And he said, how are you, Michael? He said, Niklas, I'm just going to give you one tip. You know, on Sundays, your mother always call you. And 1/3 you don't even pick up the phone. And 1/3 you say, Mom, I cannot talk. 1/3 maybe you talk a little bit, but you are really annoyed that you want to talk longer than you are. And when you hang up, you never ever call you. That's the only thing I remember. But now she's dead, and I would give away everything I own in order to get one more of those phone calls. But I can't, because she's dead. And this is what I take away from this project. Lean and blah, blah, blah. But think if we can start thinking about who do we want to be? What do we want to learn about? And I mean, just looking at this loop here, ask yourself, if you have 168 hours, what is your best week? Take a blank sheet of paper and try to position, this is my best week. This is what I spend my time on. How much time do you spend with your mother? How much time do you spend with your partner? And what kind of smile do you use when you eat a nice cake, a semla with your father? I mean, I have been oozing with emails of the TEDx community from this very morning because, I mean, what I really take away from this is that this weekend I went on a bachelor party for 3 days and we had a fantastic party with my best friends. That's a tsunami of love. And then I said, I do the speech on Sunday. And then all of a sudden my mother was here and I said, wow, my mother is here. So we had a dinner and we climbed a mountain and I slept between 9 and 10 and then I slept. And then I woke up at 3 o'clock in the night, hula. Now it's TEDx. And then I started to, I mean, it has been a stress and I slept not so much, but then I was super focused that maybe I cannot use slides and maybe I have to do this and so on. But now I'm here. This is my best way, given the time that I had. But I would never ever change it. I mean, it was time with my mother. It was time with my friends. And that's one thing that I really, really think that you should think about. Never ever end up with my friend having not the possibility anymore to talk with his mother or doing something that is really important. So lean on myself has nothing to do with management concepts. It's about leaning on yourself. What is your thing? What makes you happy now and in the future? Thanks a lot.